everyone, Redneck Computer Geek here with Mud Wizard, and I'm going to be tearing it apart today because we need to go and fix the steering. I've bent a few things, I've found a few flaws, and we're going to be addressing them. The other thing I'd like to go and address is in the start of the last video I posted up this particular clip. Now, in the end of this clip, you can actually hear the belt squeal, and I probably shouldn't have posted that clip at the very beginning of the video. What that clip is actually the very last mud running through that hole of that day, and by that time, I had actually hauled another rig all the way out of the woods, almost a half an hour pull out of the woods with Mud Wizard, and the other rig was bigger than mine. Also a hydro in neutral, which if you've ever pushed one of those hydros, you know that its neutral really isn't neutral. So that belt was definitely burnt up by the time I hit that hole, so we're going to be replacing that. But I'm going to flip the camera around and we're going to take a look at what the real problem is we need to address right now. So here we go. Alright, so let's address the actual problem that's going on. So right now, in underneath, these Craftsmans have a fan steering gear that's in underneath if it's got second gen, which is what this one's been upgraded to. So right now we've got that steering gear fan centered, not off to either side, but centered. So if we come over to this side, and then we line up with that rear tire, and we go like this, we're doing pretty good. You know, we've got a little bit of camber and a little bit of caster, but we're doing pretty good. Now, if we come over on the other side now, let's line up nicely with that rear tire. And now let's come down. That is drastically different. And now let's line up with that rear tire and let's come down. And that is drastically different. So there's one and there's two. I think at this point it's kind of obvious what's going on here. But what's actually happened, if I can get the camera in here, is that if you can see it, that right there should be straight, and it's not. It's actually got a pretty decent bend that it's developed, which has brought the entire assembly off just a little bit, and this was not rubbing originally, so this is starting to rub here because it's bent, and so we're going to rip all of this off. The other thing is, well, we're here. This needs to be addressed. So I've got these Heim joints here that I have been using for this project. As you can see, I've got a lot more of the left-hand thread ones left than I do the right-hand thread. That just is how it ended up working out. I'll include links for all of these, including the extra left-hand thread bolts, which make it a lot easier in dealing with these. And I like this size because it fits right in the end of the tubing and stuff, and you can weld it right up and everything. And while we're all doing all of this, we're going to continue to keep using our, our Easy Weld 140 in order to keep testing it out before we do a full review on it, along with finishing my new hot water tank air compressor, hopefully. But let's get back to this. So we're gonna go and jack this up and get in underneath and get that belt changed. And for those of you who talk about why it is you would ever want to go and have a winch, well, changing belts by using a tree limb is a heck of a lot nicer than changing belts in the middle of a mud hole or on the ground when you're out in the trail. So let's take a look in underneath here. So this is what a brand spanking new Kevlar belt that I run looks like. And this is what they look like after I run them for a solid 40 hours or so worth of runtime. See, I've eaten the Kevlar entirely off the side of it on both sides, and it's starting to shred. I could probably run it for regular trail running for hours and hours, but this is what happens when you end up mud running them. Yep, I would say that's a bit on the bent side. So we've got a straight edge there for comparison. You can see we've actually bent the threading on that Heim joint in order to keep it connected. So obviously that is way out of whack. So I've got to bend all of that. So down here is where the steering actually connects as far as this rod here is concerned. So what I think ended up happening was all of the bracing here, every time I impacted this, the only place it had to go was here. And that's what bent it. So what I think we're going to do is I'm going to clamp it down in the vise. I'm going to bend it back out as best I can. I'm going to hope that that unthreads and that I can put a brand new one in. And then I'm going to take probably some angle iron, I'm going to bet, and see if I can brace this whole entire thing up through so that it doesn't do this again. We'll see. Alright, well, what I chose to do at this point is I found this piece. This is a piece of spring steel, it's bed frame. I found this little piece here and I put it right where the primary kink seems to be. And I've been giving it a little bit of torque here and there and letting it settle. And just kind of going back and forth with it for a bit. We'll see if we can get it straightened. Alright, so I'm still adjusting to the new welder, discovering a few little quirks with it along the way. But as you can hear, or maybe you can't, apparently there was like pond water or something inside of this, and it was boiling off, making the most horrible steam coming out of there that stunk to high heaven. But I've got that fish plate on there and all welded all around all four sides. That piece is on and grafted into here. It's ugly and not pretty, but it'll work. And we've got a new Heim joint to put on. So there's what the Heim joint is supposed to look like. Let's see if this one will stand up. And there is what that one looks like. Not exactly the best. So there we go. We're going to let that cool down and we'll get it painted up tomorrow. And hopefully get everything put together and then put some Heim joints on the end of that. Hi, Fuzz. Bye, Fuzz. Fuzz! How are you? There we go. So the suspension I-beam is reinstalled. As you can see, it's straightened back out and set back in with the suspension. And I need to make a tie rod piece for this at some point, but right now I just want to get this up and running so that we can be able to take it out if we get the chance this weekend. Fuzz. Hi, Fuzz. Alright, so let's get the dry belt in, and it's the stock AYP clutch underneath here. There's nothing special about this whatsoever. It is the stock clutch. The only difference is if you look up in underneath, you'll see that there is a extra spring that's been added over the top of the stock clutch that came out of an MTD rear clutch assembly. Alright, let's get the drive belt in.